The first time I watched the video, I didn't hear my wife's screams. I heard my own breathing, slow and heavy in my ears, like I was back on a mission instead of sitting on my couch. The camera was shaking so much the streetlights looked like smears of yellow paint. But you could still see what mattered. My pregnant wife on the ground, a cop's knee in her back, his fist driving down, and then his face turning toward the lens with this relaxed little smile, like he was proud of himself. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I froze the frame right on that smile and just stared at it. I've seen men do ugly things. I was a Navy SEAL for 8 years. But there was something different about that expression on his face, something casual, like he wasn't just hurting her. He was broadcasting a message. Nobody can touch me. The upload title made it worse. Officer keeping the streets safe. The clip had been sent from a blocked number. No caption, no intro, just the file and a single line of text. Watch this before it disappears. I'd almost ignored it. I get weird stuff all the time from old buddies. Dark humor, or clips, things normal people don't share. But when I tapped play and saw the hoodie, the messy bun, the way she held her stomach when she walked, I knew instantly it was my wife. Her name is Violet, and when we first met, she liked to joke that she saved me from staying married to the Navy. Back then I believed her. I believed a lot of things. On the video, she's standing by her car, hands out, trying to explain something I can't hear over the wind. The cop steps in close, too close, his flashlight cutting across her face. He's taller than her, built like a guy who never misses leg day, the kind of build that makes a uniform look even more official. His tone is calm, flat, like he's ordering food, not talking to a terrified pregnant woman. "Ma'am, stop resisting," he keeps saying, even though she's not moving toward him at all. She's backing away, pointing at her stomach, repeating, I'm pregnant, but he talks right over her. Then, fast, hand on her shoulder, twist, sweep of the leg, she's down on the asphalt. She curls up, her arms wrapping around her belly, trying to cover the baby, and that's when he drops his knee into her back. Whoever's filming whispers, "Dude, what the hell?" But they don't step in. You can hear traffic, a horn, somebody shouting from far away, but nobody comes close. It's just my wife, that cop, and a world that suddenly doesn't feel as free as everyone likes to pretend. Most guys in my position would have thrown the phone across the room or punched a hole in the wall. Back in the teams, that's what people expected from us. Impact, force, always moving forward. But the truth is, the training does something else to you. It teaches you to delay the explosion. You don't react to pain, you react to information. So I rewound the video and watched it again. This time I made myself listen carefully. Under the wind and the traffic, I could hear Violet's voice cracking, begging. "Please, I didn't do anything. I'm just trying to get home." I could hear the officer's breathing, steady and unbothered, like his heart rate never even ticked up. "Stop resisting. Stop resisting. It doesn't have to be like this." That last line made me sit up. I've heard that line before, in different places, said by different men, but it always meant the same thing. Your choices are an illusion. I'm in control. I paused the video and pinched to zoom on his face. The pixels broke apart, but his expression didn't. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He looked bored, almost disappointed, like he'd expected more of a fight from her. And then, in the middle of all that, I noticed something I'd missed the first time. It wasn't the hit. It wasn't the knee in her back. It was his hand. Right before he takes her down, his hand slides from the top of her shoulder to the side of her neck, fingers spreading a little too soft, too familiar. It's a small movement, just a second long, but I know my wife's body language, and I know the way people touch when they think no one is really watching. He wasn't just manhandling a stranger. It looked like a man touching someone he'd already crossed lines with. I replayed those 2 seconds over and over, so many times I could feel the motion in my own hand. My chest burned. She needs stability, not more chaos. Can you give her that? I wouldn't be here if I couldn't. I told her. I meant it. Mostly, we were good together. We built a little life, small house, secondhand furniture, late-night takeout on the couch when my construction shifts ran long. I traded the rhythm of gunfire for the rhythm of her humming while she watered plants, or the way she'd narrate cheesy reality shows out loud until I ended up watching with her. Every time I caught myself scanning exits at restaurants or flinching when a truck backfired, she'd squeeze my hand under the table. "I've got you," she'd whisper. And I believed her. The cracks started small. A text she tilted away when I walked by. And "I'm just tired," when I asked if she wanted to go for our usual Friday night ice cream run. She started blaming everything on the pregnancy before there even was a pregnancy. "Sorry I'm snappy. It's just hormones," she'd say, months before the positive test. I knew that biology didn't work like that, but I wanted so badly to be the supportive husband, the stable guy Natalie had demanded, that I swallowed my questions. Then came the nights she didn't answer my calls. "I left my phone in the car," she'd say. "Girls' night ran late. You know how Ruby is when she starts venting." Except I'd never once heard Ruby mention a girls' night in the year I'd known her. When Violet finally told me she was pregnant, I thought the weirdness would go away. We were standing in our tiny bathroom, cheap stick in her hand, both of us staring at the little plus sign like it was a bomb that might go off. She laughed first, this shaky, almost unbelieving laugh, and then she launched herself at me, arms around my neck. "Mason, we're having a baby," she kept saying into my shoulder. For a second, every ugly thing I'd ever seen in the world blurred at the edges. There was just us, that crappy bathroom, and a future I hadn't let myself imagine before. We told Natalie over dinner the next week. She went from stunned silence to full production mode in under 30 seconds. "Of course you'll move closer to us," she said, not asked. "Violet, you need your mother. And Mason, you'll be working long hours. You can't expect her to do this alone." She made it sound like I was already failing at a job I hadn't officially started yet. When I opened my mouth to say we liked our little house on our side of town, she cut me off with a tight-lipped smile. "Look, I know you mean well," she said, "but you didn't exactly have a normal upbringing in the military. There are things about babies you just don't understand yet." Violet stared down at her plate. She didn't defend me. Driving home that night, I asked, "Do you want to move closer to your mom?" She kept her eyes on the road. "I don't know," she said. "She just wants to help. Can we not fight about this right now? I'm tired." I let it go. I told myself picking battles was part of being a good husband. But lately, "I'm tired" had become the period at the end of every sentence. Tired when I tried to talk about baby names. Tired when I reached for her in bed. Tired when I asked where she'd been when she walked in smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. The night of the video, she wasn't home when she said she would be. I'd texted at 9, then 10, then 11. She finally replied close to midnight. "Sorry, got pulled over. Long story, I'm fine. Please don't freak out." I stared at that message then. Now I stared at the proof of what pulled over actually meant. She'd gone to bed hours earlier, claiming exhaustion, while my phone sat silent, that blocked number's message waiting in the queue. From down the hall, I could hear the faint rhythm of her breathing. For years, that sound had been my anchor, the thing that reminded me I wasn't on some rooftop in another country listening for footsteps. Now it just reminded me how far away she felt, even sleeping 15 feet from where I sat. I picked up my phone again and replayed the part where he said her name. "You knew how this works, Violet." He said it like a boyfriend talking to someone who keeps picking the worst moment to grow a conscience. Like there was a system, a routine, and she'd broken it by panicking. I backed out of the video and opened our message thread. Hundreds of blue and gray bubbles, memes, grocery lists, ultrasound photos, little "I miss you" notes from when I worked late. Somewhere in the last few months, the tone had shifted and I hadn't wanted to see it. "How's patrol going?" she'd texted one Tuesday. I'd assumed she meant the neighborhood watch she'd volunteered for. Now that word scraped down my spine like sandpaper. Patrol. Not your day or your shift. My thumb hovered over her name at the top of the screen, then drifted sideways to the little info icon. I'd never gone through her phone before. She'd never gone through mine. We'd prided ourselves on being those people who trusted each other enough not to snoop. But there's a difference between trust and blindness. And that video had just ripped the bandage off. I set my phone down long enough to stand, walk down the hallway, and pause in the bedroom doorway. Violet lay on her side, one hand resting on her small bump, face soft in sleep. An empty glass of water sat on the nightstand next to her prenatal vitamins and the framed photo from our wedding. For a moment, the urge to slide in beside her, wrap myself around her, and pretend none of this existed almost won. But the cop's hand on her neck kept flashing behind my eyes. I walked over, as quietly as I could, and eased her phone out from under her fingers. She didn't wake. Back on the couch, I stared at the lock screen. For digits. Her birthday worked on the first try. Her messages glowed up at me in the dark. Our thread, her group chats, and one conversation pinned at the top with a name I'd never noticed before. Officer Grant. Officer Grant. Seeing his name at the top of her messages felt like getting punched without bracing. It wasn't just Grant, the way guys show up in my contacts, last name, rank, easy to forget. It was the full thing, pinned, with a little heart she must have added months ago without ever thinking I'd see it. My thumb hovered over the thread for a second. Part of me still wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation, that maybe he was assigned to our neighborhood and they'd exchanged numbers after a community meeting or something. That's what denial does. It drafts stories faster than truth ever can. I tapped. The first thing that hit me wasn't even the words. It was the length of the conversation. I had to scroll past weeks of texts before I got to anything I didn't remember hearing about. Late-night messages time-stamped at 1:23 a.m., 2:07 a.m., hours when she'd told me she was crashing early or too wiped to talk. At the beginning, it almost did look normal. "Thanks for checking on our street, Officer Grant," she wrote. "No problem, Violet. Just doing patrol," he answered. She sent him a picture of a broken streetlight at the corner, complained about cars speeding near the houses, things a nervous, expectant mother might say. Then the tone started to tilt. "You're the only one who actually listens when I talk about this stuff," she typed one night. "Most people just say I'm overreacting." He replied, "That's because most people haven't seen what I've seen on these streets. You're not overreacting. You're smart to be scared. Smart to be scared." I recognized that phrase. It's what we used to say to new guys when we wanted them alert, but pliable. As I scrolled further, the messages blurred together into a sick pattern, her venting about me coming home late, about my military brain, about Natalie writing her about everything. He was right there every time, a steady drip of validation. "If Mason won't slow down, you have to think about the baby," he wrote once. "You can't depend on a man who still lives like he's on deployment." I tasted metal in my mouth, the way I used to before a mission went sideways. She typed back, "You're the only one who gets it." Mixed in with the emotional stuff were photos, nothing explicit, but intimate in ways that made my stomach twist. Selfies in his cruiser, her reflected in the passenger window. A shot of his hand on the steering wheel. Her caption, "I feel safer when you're on shift." A picture of her bare knees on his dashboard, blurred city lights beyond the windshield. My hands started to shake. I set the phone down for a second, pressed my palms into my thighs, and forced myself to breathe the way they taught us. Slow in, slower out. Count each exhale. Losing control wouldn't change what I was reading. When I picked it back up, I focused on the parts where his tone changed. At some point, he stopped sounding like a sympathetic cop and started sounding like he owned the ground she walked on. "You know the rules, Violet," he wrote after one message where she'd said she couldn't meet. "You can't blow me off when you get scared of your own choices." Another night, "If you start talking to people about us, I can't protect you. Or your soldier." That word. Not husband. Soldier. He knew exactly how to turn my world into a liability in hers. The most recent messages were from just a few hours before the video. Violet, I don't think I can do this tonight. The baby's kicking weird. I just want to go home. Grant, we just need to talk. 5 minutes. I'm right by your exit. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Her final text before everything went quiet. Okay. 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes. That's all she'd promised him. It was more than she'd given me that day. I scrolled further back until my eyes caught on a line that made my chest go cold. Violet, what if Mason finds out? He's not like other guys. Grant, relax. I've handled worse. He's trained to follow rules. I'm the one who writes them out here. He wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using the badge on his chest to keep her in line. A floorboard creaked down the hall. I quickly locked her phone and set it face down, every muscle tensed like I was in some hostile building, not my own living room. Violet appeared in the doorway a moment later, hair mussed, one hand on the wall, the other resting on her stomach. Hey, she murmured, voice thick with sleep. Why are you still up? What time is it? I watched her for a beat too long. Even knowing what I knew now, part of me still registered the familiar things. The way her t-shirt slipped off one shoulder, the way she squinted in the dim light. Grief isn't just about losing someone to death. Sometimes it's standing 10 feet from them and realizing the version you loved is already gone. It's late, I said. Couldn't sleep. She shuffled closer, eyes landing on my phone, but not hers. Is it your head again? She asked quietly. The dreams. It would have been so easy to nod. Let her slide into that old role of caretaker. Let both of us pretend nothing had shifted. But the image of her in that video, his hand on her, his texts in her phone, it all crowded in too tight. You said you got pulled over tonight, I said, keeping my voice as even as I could. How bad was it? She froze, just for a heartbeat. Then her face rearranged into the tired, put-upon expression I'd seen so much lately. It was nothing, she said. He was being dramatic, that's all. I was going a little over, and he decided to make it a whole thing. I'm fine. I studied her. In the teams, we used to say you learn to read micro-expressions better than maps. Her jaw was too tight, eyes not quite meeting mine, one thumb rubbing the edge of her belly in jittery circles. He put his hands on you, I said. On your neck. On your back. Color drained from her face. For a second, real fear flashed there. Then it vanished under anger. Were you watching something? She snapped. What? Are you tracking me now? Is this more of your war paranoia? The words stung, mostly because they weren't brand new. She'd thrown that phrase at me before when I'd asked too many questions. This time, I didn't flinch. Somebody sent me a video, I said, of a cop pulling over a pregnant woman who looks exactly like you. He throws her to the ground, knees her in the back, and then he smiles at the camera. Her hand flew to her mouth. For a split second, I saw something like shame flicker in her eyes, but it hardened into defensiveness almost instantly. People film everything these days, she said, voice rising. You know how the internet is. They edit things, twist things. You're just seeing what they want you to see. I thought about the texts. About you know the rules, and I can't protect you if you talk. Did you send anyone that video? She demanded, stepping closer. Mason, this could ruin his career. He has a family. He beat my pregnant wife on the side of the road. I cut in quietly, while she begged him to stop. That's what could ruin his career. She swallowed hard. Her gaze darted toward the hall, toward where her phone sat. This is exactly what my mom meant, she said, voice trembling now. You always turn everything into submission. You can't just let things go. You have to escalate. You have to make it a war. There it was, Natalie's voice, coming out of her mouth. I didn't raise mine. Did you know him before that traffic stop? I asked. Officer Grant, how long have you two been talking? She opened her mouth, closed it, then lifted her chin. He checks on our street, she said carefully. He's been around. He listens when I talk about things you don't want to hear. That's all. Not all. Not even close. But you let him put his hands on you, I said. You let him pull you over, meet you late, text you at 2 in the morning. You let him talk about me like I'm some problem to manage. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm pregnant, she whispered. I've been scared, and alone, and you're always gone. And he what? I asked. He made you feel wanted? Safe? Did he tell you I'm dangerous, so you'd lean on him instead? She stepped back like I'd slapped her, even though I hadn't moved. Tears spilled over now, streaking down her cheeks. You're twisting everything, she said. This is why I didn't tell you. You don't understand what it's like to live in constant fear. I almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny, but because the irony was so sharp it hurt. I understand fear, I said quietly. I just don't usually sleep with it. Silence thickened between us. Her shoulders shook. For a moment, I thought she might finally break, spill the truth, admit whatever this entanglement really was. Instead, she spun away. I can't do this right now, she said. I need to lie down. For the baby. She walked back to the bedroom without another word. I sat there, alone with two phones and a reality I hadn't trained for. On one screen, a cop in uniform smiled into a camera after putting my wife on the pavement. On the other, his name glowed at the top of her messages with a tiny heart, like he belonged there. I didn't know everything yet, but I knew enough to see the shape of it. A corrupt cop with too much power, a wife tangled in something she couldn't, or wouldn't, name, and a man trying to keep from becoming the weapon everyone already assumed he was. And underneath all of that, one thought kept pounding in my head, steady as a drumbeat. Grant wasn't just hurting my family. He was sure nobody could ever touch him for it. I didn't sleep. I sat there in the dark with both phones on the table, watching the sky outside the window thin from black to gray, while the same questions looped in my head. By the time the first line of sunlight touched the neighbor's roof, one thing was clear. Whatever was going on between Violet and Officer Grant wasn't just some emotional venting gone too far. It was a pattern built on fear, pressure, and the kind of power imbalance I'd seen ruin people in other countries. Around 6, Violet's alarm went off down the hall, that soft chiming she'd picked because harsh alarms spike my anxiety. I listened to her move around, bathroom sink running, closet door sliding, her steps slower than they used to be before the pregnancy. Every sound used to be comforting. Now they felt like footsteps in a house I no longer recognized. When she came into the kitchen, the morning sun hit the side of her neck where I knew his hand had been. There was the faintest shadow of a bruise along her jaw, half covered by makeup. She poured herself orange juice without looking at me. "We can't let my mom see that video," she said, like we were already mid-conversation. "Or anyone. She'll freak out, and she'll call internal affairs, and it'll just blow up." There it was again, blow up, war, escalate. All the things everyone was so sure I was going to do. Internal affairs exists for a reason, I said. Cops aren't supposed to slam pregnant women into the road for sport. She flinched. It wasn't. He wasn't doing it for sport, she muttered. You don't understand how these stops work. They have protocols. I'd watched the footage of other pregnant women being taken down in the news. A deputy yanking a woman from her car, another trooper flipping a vehicle with a pit maneuver. The lawsuits always sounded the same. Negligent, excessive force, placed her life and the life of her unborn child at risk. Everyone argued about policy, while some family tried to figure out how to live with what was left. You asked him to throw you to the ground. I asked quietly. Her eyes flashed. You're twisting it again, she snapped. He didn't mean to hurt me. He just overreacted. He told me afterward he was scared I was going to run or something. You were pregnant and unarmed, I said. Where were you going to go, Violet? Waddle away. She slammed her glass down a little too hard. Juice sloshed over the rim. Do you hear yourself? She shot back. This is exactly the attitude that makes him nervous. You think because you wore a uniform once you know everything about danger. I let the jab land. Then I slid my phone toward her, the video already queued up to the moment his knee hit her back. Watch it, I said. Not the edited version in your head. The actual one. She hesitated, then pressed play. Her face changed as she watched. Confusion, then horror, then something like dissociation, like she was seeing a stranger wearing her body. When the sound of her own voice begging filled the kitchen, her hand flew to her mouth. "Pause it," she whispered. I didn't. I let it run until the frame froze on his smile. Finally, she jabbed at the screen herself, stopping it. Tears were tracking through her makeup now, carving pale paths down her cheeks. "He said," she started, then shook her head. "He told me the dash cam would make it look different, that it would show I was being aggressive, that I came at him." "Dash cams can be pulled," I said. "Body cam too. That footage plus this? That's enough to start something." She stepped back like I'd suggested setting the house on fire. "No," she said sharply. "You don't understand. If you go after him, he'll drag everything out. He'll bring up things you don't want people knowing. About us." "Like what?" I asked. "Like how long you've been meeting him on the side of the road. How many rides you've taken in his cruiser that don't show up on any report." She winced, shoulders hunching. Shame and anger warred in her expression. "I didn't mean for any of that to happen," she said, voice cracking. "It started small. He was just someone who listened when I felt like I was drowning. Then it got complicated." Complicated. That word does a lot of heavy lifting in stories like this. "You're not the one I'm planning to put in handcuffs," I said. "He is." Her gaze snapped up to mine. "You think they'll protect me?" she whispered. "You think if this goes public, the department will wrap me in a blanket and say, 'Poor Violet, you were manipulated'?" He told me what happens to women who accuse cops. He showed me articles. My stomach tightened. I'd seen those stories too. Women thrown out of cars, stomped, taunted, then painted as unstable or combative when they dared to complain. He said if I went to anyone, he'd make it look like I jumped him first, she continued, words tumbling now. That no judge or jury would believe a hysterical pregnant woman over a decorated officer. Decorated. Of course he was. That's how predators work, Vi. I said, softer. They build a reputation that makes them bulletproof. They count on people like you being too scared and people like me being too angry to think straight. She sank into a chair, pressing both hands over her face. "I messed up," she said, voice muffled. "I liked the attention. I liked feeling like someone cared what I was scared of. By the time I realized he was not what I thought, it was already," she trailed off, shoulders shaking. I watched her cry and felt two truths slam into each other inside my chest. One, she'd betrayed me, not just with her body, but with her secrets. Two, he'd seen every weak spot in our marriage and driven a squad car right through it. "What do you want me to do?" I asked finally. "Pretend I never saw this. Pretend he didn't put his hands on you or threaten you or our kid." She dropped her hands. "I want you not to get yourself killed," she said. "I know you, Mason. You'll start digging and pushing and showing that video to anyone who will look, and sooner or later he'll feel cornered. And men like him don't go down quiet." She wasn't wrong. Cornered men with power bite the hardest. I sat back, exhaling slowly. "I'm not planning to kick in anyone's door," I said. "I'm going to talk to someone who knows how to use this the right way." "A lawyer?" she guessed. "Someone who's dealt with cops before," I said. "People sue departments all the time for this kind of thing. Excessive force, civil rights violations. This isn't new." "It's new to me," she whispered. Her phone buzzed on the counter. We both looked at it. Officer Grant's name lit the screen. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she snatched it up, turned away, and answered. "Hello," she said, voice shaky. I couldn't hear his words, but I could hear the tone, a low, clipped murmur, the sound of a man who assumes the room belongs to him. Color drained from her face as she listened. "No, he doesn't know anything," she said quickly, glancing at me. "It was just a rough night. I told you that." My jaw clenched. She paused, then added, "I deleted it. There's nothing to worry about." That was the moment I realized she wasn't just afraid of him. She was actively trying to manage both of us, hoping to keep her world from collapsing by telling each man exactly what he wanted to hear. When she hung up, I asked, "You told him you deleted it?" "He panicked when he thought someone recorded," she said. "He said if any video of him doing his job got out, It'd be open season on him and his family. He made me promise I'd erase anything if it ever showed up. But you didn't film this, I said. Someone else did. Someone who's already scared enough to hide their identity. And if they disappear, she shot back. Do you want that on you? On us. The awful thing was, I understood that fear. In war zones, we used to rely on locals willing to point out threats. If one of them vanished after helping us, the guilt stuck to your skin like smoke. I'd already been quiet too long in my life. This time, silence would be a choice. I'm going to make copies of this, I said, tapping my phone. Multiple backups, off-site. If he thinks scaring you will make this vanish, he's wrong. She stared at me, eyes red. Are you leaving me? She asked suddenly. The question knocked the breath out of me more than any punch could have. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. Right now, I'm trying to make sure our child survives being used as leverage in whatever game he thinks he's playing. She flinched at the word, our, and something in her expression shifted. Guilt, fear, something I couldn't quite name yet. Before I could ask, my own phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Is this Mason? A male voice asked, low and tense. Who's asking? I replied. I'm the one who filmed your wife last night, he said. And if that cop figures out it was me, I'm dead. We need to talk. The caller's voice had that edge I recognized from combat zones. Tight, controlled, one notch away from breaking. He said his name was Logan, that he lived near the intersection where Violet had been stopped, that he'd filmed because he couldn't just sit there and watch a pregnant woman get ragdolled by a cop. He also said he'd already had one run-in with Grant a few months back and wasn't eager for a second. I can meet you, he said, but it has to be somewhere public, and you can't tell anyone I called. Not your wife, not the cops, nobody. I glanced at Violet, still at the table, wiping at her face with the edge of her sleeve like she could scrub the night away. Fine, I said. Text me a place. He picked a grocery store parking lot across town, broad daylight, cameras on the light poles, people coming and going with carts. It was the kind of place where, in theory, nobody should be able to make you disappear. On the drive over, my brain kept bouncing between two tracks. One focused on this stranger with a video that could blow Grant's life open. The other stuck on Violet's words, the way she'd said complicated, and he listens, like those things could cancel out what he'd done. That's one of the worst parts of betrayal. Your memories don't update all at once. They flicker between old loyalty and new information like a broken signal. Logan turned out to be younger than I expected, early 20s, maybe, ball cap pulled low, eyes darting everywhere but mine. He stood by a beat-up sedan that looked like it had lost at least 3 arguments with a shopping cart. You really him? He asked as I walked up. The husband. Yeah, I said. I'm Mason. He nodded once, jaw tight, then pulled out his phone. I was just sitting at that red light, he said, pointing toward the road beyond the lot. Saw the cruiser, saw your wife's car, and something about how he yanked her door open. I hit record without even thinking. He handed me his phone, the same clip I'd already watched, but from a slightly wider angle. You could see more of the street, more of the way Grant positioned his body to block anyone else from stepping in. You could also hear Logan's own whispered commentary. This isn't right. Dude, chill. She's pregnant. A running chorus of disbelief. I uploaded it to a private group I run, he said quietly. It's like cop watch stuff, you know? We post bad stops, share info, try to keep each other from getting stomped. Within an hour, some accounts I don't recognize started DMing me, telling me to take it down before I attracted attention. Same wording, different profiles. Bots? I asked. Or burner accounts, he said. Either way, I got spooked and deleted the post. But not before I backed up the original and screen recorded it twice. Smart kid. You send it to anyone else? I asked. He shook his head. Just you, he said. I looked you up through property records. It wasn't hard to figure out who she was married to. That sent a little chill down my spine, but I couldn't argue with the usefulness. He'd found me faster than internal affairs ever would have found him. I'm planning to talk to a lawyer. I said. Someone who knows how to handle police misconduct cases. This video could make a difference. Logan swallowed. Will my name be in it? He asked. Not if I can help it, I said. There are ways to submit evidence without hanging a target on your back. Anonymous complaints, whistleblower protections, that kind of thing. He huffed out a humorless laugh. Yeah, sure, he said. Tell that to the last guy who tried to cross Grant. He's not just some random beat cop. He does union stuff, knows everybody. They circle wagons for people like him. He wasn't wrong. Departments don't like admitting their good officers slam pregnant women into pavement. It makes all their body cam pledges and community trust slogans ring hollow. I can't promise it'll be safe, I said. But I can promise I won't throw you to the wolves. He studied my face for a long second, then nodded once. I didn't film this to go viral, he said. I filmed it because if that was my sister or my girl, I'd want someone to back me up. We swapped contact info, encrypted app, burner emails, and I transferred his original file and both screen recordings to my phone, then to a secure cloud I hadn't used since I left the Navy. Multiple backups, different locations. Redundancy is survival. On the way home, I called a lawyer. His name was Oliver, recommended by an old teammate who'd had his own run-in with dirty cops years back. Oliver specialized in civil rights and police misconduct, body cam disputes, excessive force, wrongful arrests, the stuff departments quietly settle when they don't want a jury seeing the footage. Send me everything, he said after I gave him the bare outline. Video, texts, medical records from the ER if she went, any prior complaints you can dig up about this officer. She's scared to go on record, I told him. He's been in her head for a while. That's common, Oliver said. Officers who cross lines usually test boundaries slowly. Emotional dependency, small favors, then pressure, then threats. Legally and psychologically, she's as much a victim as anyone. I stared out the windshield at the road unspooling in front of me. She also cheated on me with him, I said. So I'm having a hard time putting the victim label on her right now. There was a pause on the line. That complicates your marriage, he said. It doesn't change what he did in that video. He was right, and I hated that it didn't make any of it hurt less. We'll start with a preservation letter, Oliver continued. I'll send formal notice to the department demanding they secure all dash cam and body cam footage from that stop, plus dispatch logs. If they lose it after that, a judge will see it for what it is. Internal affairs, preservation letters, potential lawsuits. It all sounded clinical, clean, like we were talking about paperwork instead of people. But this was the only kind of fight I could justify right now. Not fists, not guns, just truth pinned down in ways they couldn't wriggle away from. When I pulled into our driveway, a patrol car was rolling slowly past the end of the street. I couldn't see the driver's face through the glare, but my instincts hummed the way they used to when something was about to go wrong. Inside, Violet was on the couch, knees pulled up as far as her belly would allow, staring at the TV without really watching it. She looked up when I came in, eyes swollen. Where did you go? She asked. To talk to someone who didn't put their knee in your back, I said. She flinched. You told a lawyer already? She asked. Mason, you're moving too fast. Fast. If anything, this felt excruciatingly slow compared to what my body wanted. To storm his precinct, to drag him into the light by his collar. I'm moving before he has time to rewrite the story, I said. Oliver's sending a preservation letter. Once that's in, they can't accidentally erase anything without it coming back on them. She pressed her lips together. And what about us? She whispered. What are you preserving there? The question hung between us like smoke. I didn't have a good answer yet. Did you go to the ER after he did that? I asked instead, nodding toward her belly. She shook her head. I called the on-call nurse, she said. She told me to monitor kick counts, watch for bleeding. I was bruised, but the baby was moving. Call your OB, I said. Tell them what happened. We need it documented in your medical record, date, trauma, everything. She hesitated. What if they call the police? She asked. What if it gets back to him? If a doctor can't note that you were assaulted without tipping off the attacker, the system's even more broken than I thought, I said. Later that afternoon, we sat in an exam room that smelled like antiseptic and baby powder while a nurse typed Violet's reluctant description into a chart. When the doctor came in, a woman named Morgan, all calm efficiency and tired eyes. She listened, asked questions, then did a thorough check, measuring, pressing, moving the ultrasound wand across Violet's stomach. "The baby looks okay," Morgan said finally, turning the screen so we could see the flicker of a heartbeat. "But this kind of blunt force is absolutely not nothing. If you choose to pursue legal action, these notes will matter." "If," Violet echoed softly. As Morgan finished her notes, she frowned slightly at the chart. "Remind me," she said, "when did you say your last period was?" Violet rattled off a date from a few months back. Morgan tapped her pen against the clipboard. "And Mason, you said you were out of town for work at the end of that month?" she asked, glancing at me. "Yeah," I said slowly. "I had a 3-week job out of state." "What?" "Just making sure I'm not mixing charts," she said quickly, but something in her tone tightened. "I'll double-check the conception window with the ultrasound measurements. Sometimes dates are fuzzy when people are stressed." A strange, cold feeling slid down my spine. I'd sat through enough briefings and medical updates to recognize when a professional was holding something back. On the way home, Violet stared out the passenger window, hand on her belly. "I don't know how this is all supposed to end," she said quietly. "Even if you take him down, even if a judge believes you, what does that make us? What does that make this baby?" I didn't answer right away, because in the back of my mind, Morgan's hesitation and the calendar were starting to add up in ways I didn't want them to. Later that night, after she'd fallen into an exhausted sleep, I pulled out the folder with her prenatal paperwork, the one we kept on the dresser, stuffed with ultrasound printouts and appointment cards. I flipped to the page where Morgan had written estimated conception date and compared it to my travel orders, still saved in an email I hadn't deleted. The overlap wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to make my throat go dry. Close enough that a simple, brutal thought hit me harder than any punch Grant could throw. What if the baby I was fighting so hard to protect wasn't mine at all? That question lodged itself under my ribs and stayed there. What if the baby I was fighting for with everything I had wasn't even mine? I didn't bring it up that night. Violet fell asleep faster than I'd ever seen, like her body had finally hit its limit. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing and the faint ticking of the clock on the dresser. Every time I closed my eyes, numbers floated behind them. Dates, weeks, flights, deployment orders, appointment times. I'd spent my life trusting timelines. Now the math felt like it was turning against me. The next morning, I called Oliver from my truck before going into work. On a scale from 1 to nuclear, I asked, how messy does it get if, during all this, a paternity question comes up? He didn't sound surprised. "You're not the first client to ask me that," he said. "It complicates custody, divorce, emotional fallout. Legally, though, if an officer assaulted a pregnant woman, the DNA of the child doesn't erase what he did." "I'm not asking for him," I said. "I'm asking for me. I need to know what I'm actually standing in front of." There was a pause. "You're allowed to ask for genetic testing," Oliver said. "You're married. The law presumes you're the father unless shown otherwise. But I'll be straight with you. It's the kind of truth you can't put back in the box once it's out." I already knew that. The box was cracked open. I was just deciding whether to lift the lid all the way. "Can I do it without turning it into a circus?" I asked. "I don't want some swab test in front of a judge being the first time anyone talks about this." "There are quiet ways," he said. "Talk to her doctor. Tell her you want clarity before you make life-altering decisions. If Violet agrees, it stays between you, her, and the lab, at least at first. If." That little word weighed more than some of the rucks I'd carried. I waited until that evening. We were in the living room, the TV on but muted, some home renovation show flashing bright houses we'd never live in. Violet sat curled into the corner of the couch, legs tucked under her, a blanket thrown over her knees. Her hand kept drifting over her stomach in small circles, like she was trying to calm the baby. Or herself. Maybe both. "I need to ask you something," I said. She didn't look away from the screen. "That sounds ominous. When did you first sleep with him?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw the name like a grenade. I just laid the question on the table between us and let it sit. She went completely still. The show's fake laughter filled the silence for a few seconds before I picked up the remote and turned it off. Now it was just us and the low hum of the fridge down the hall. "Mason, don't say you don't know." I cut in, still calm. "You remember the first time you crossed that kind of line? You remember where, when, why? Especially when it's with a man who now has his knee in your back on video." She swallowed, eyes shiny. "It wasn't one moment," she said. "It was a lot of little moments that I let pile up until I couldn't tell where friendship ended and the rest began." "Pick one," I said. "The first time you knew it wasn't just talking." She stared at her hands for so long I started to think she wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, "Last fall. That week you were out of state. I told you I was staying at my mom's more because she didn't like being alone. He drove me home from a neighborhood watch meeting when my car wouldn't start." I closed my eyes for a second. Fall. The same stretch of time Morgan had circled on the chart with her questions. The dates lined up too neatly to ignore. "When you found out you were pregnant," I said, opening my eyes again, "did you ever wonder?" She flinched like I'd hit her. "Don't," she whispered. "Please, don't make me say it." "Violet," I said, softer now. "I'm not asking to be cruel. I'm asking because I'm building my life around this child in my head. If I'm constructing that on a lie, I need to know before I pour concrete." Her shoulders shook. Tears slid down without the usual drama. Just quiet, endless. "Of course I thought about it," she said finally. "I tried to ignore the timeline, tried to fudge a week here and there in my head. I told myself it had to be you because the alternative made me sick. And now?" I asked. "And now I don't know," she said. Her voice broke. "Is that what you want to hear? That I don't know whose baby I'm carrying? That I let things get so tangled I can't even tell where my body began and is ended?" The words landed like shrapnel, not because they were surprising, but because hearing them out loud stripped away the last of my denial. "We can find out," I said. "There are tests they can do before the birth. Safe ones. We can do it together." She shook her head, panic flaring in her eyes. No, I can't. If it's not yours, you'll leave. You'll hate me. You'll hate the baby. You'll walk away, and I'll be alone with a target on my back and a cop who already knows too much." I thought of Grant's texts, his rules, his casual threats, his confidence that her fear would keep her where he wanted her. "I don't hate that baby," I said. "I don't even know whose DNA it's carrying yet, and I still don't hate it. I hate what he did. I hate what you hid. But that kid didn't ask for any of this." Her breath hitched. "You're saying that now?" she whispered. "Wait until a piece of paper tells you you've been loving another man's child. Then let the paper say it or not." I answered. I'd rather face a hard truth than keep building a life on questions. For a long time, she just cried. Not the showy kind she sometimes used with her mother, but the raw, quiet kind that made her shoulders tremble and her voice disappear. Eventually she nodded, once, like it cost her something. "Talk to Morgan," she said. "I can't you ask her. If there's a way to do it without everyone in the waiting room knowing our business, I'll sign." It wasn't agreement so much as surrender, but it was enough. The next day, I called Morgan's office and asked if we could talk privately. In her small consult room, with the blinds half drawn and a framed watercolor of some anonymous beach on the wall, I laid it out as clinically as I could. She listened without interrupting, her expression a mix of professional distance and human regret. "There is a non-invasive prenatal paternity test," she said. "It uses the baby's DNA found in Violet's blood and compares it to a cheek swab from you and the other man. It can be done safely. It is expensive and emotionally brutal, but if clarity is what you need, it's an option. I doubt he'll be cheerfully lining up to swab his cheek, I said. Her mouth tightened. I suspected as much. In that case, we can still test your DNA against the fetal sample. If it's a match, we know you're the father. If it's not, we can infer the rest without involving him, for now. Violet signed the consent forms with a shaking hand. I swabbed my cheek in the lab while she had blood drawn down the hall. The whole process took maybe 20 minutes. Waiting for the results felt like waiting out a siege. 2 weeks later, Morgan called and asked us both to come in together. No results over the phone, she said. Too sensitive. The drive there was quiet. Violet stared straight ahead, fingers twisting the strap of her bag. I could feel every mile like an extra pound on my chest. In the exam room, Morgan didn't touch the computer at first. She just looked at us, then at Violet's belly, noticeably bigger than it had been when this all started. I'm going to be direct, she said. The test showed that you are not the biological father, Mason. The sentence was simple. My body didn't take it simply. For a moment, sound went thin, the edges of the room blurring like someone had hit a concussion grenade in my head. I gripped the side of the chair until my knuckles ached, focusing on the texture of the vinyl just to keep from floating off. Beside me, Violet made a small, wounded noise, like the air had been punched out of her. I'm sorry, she said over and over. I'm so sorry. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, breathing through the kind of pain you can't stitch or splint. Morgan gave us space, then added quietly, biology isn't the only way people become parents. But I know that's not a decision anyone can force you into. On the way home, we didn't talk. The words between us felt too big to fit in the car. I dropped Violet at the house and then, without really planning to, drove straight to Natalie's. If there was one person who'd been pushing a narrative from the start, it was her. I needed to see how much of this story she already knew. She opened the door with that familiar tight smile, then froze when she saw my face. Mason? Where's Violet? What's wrong? We got test results today, I said. No small talk. No games. You're smart, Natalie. You've been watching all this like it's some show you're directing. Tell me the truth. How long have you known this baby might not be mine? For the first time since I'd met her, she actually looked rattled. Color drained from her face, and her hand tightened on the doorknob. You're upset, she said carefully. This isn't the time. Cut it. I snapped, the word sharper than I meant it to be. You've been in every conversation about my stability, about what's best for your daughter, about how I should and shouldn't react. You've had opinions on my entire marriage. Did you ever once, in all that, mention that your grandchild could belong to a cop who beats pregnant women on the asphalt? Her eyes flicked away, just for a second. It was enough. You knew, I said. It wasn't a question anymore. She exhaled, shoulders dropping, mask slipping just a little. I knew there was a possibility, she said. And I knew that if you found out, everything would explode. So I tried to keep this family from tearing itself apart. Someone had to. I stared at her, feeling something in me harden into a new shape. The corrupt cop had broken my trust. My wife had shattered it. Now I was starting to see that the rot went deeper than just one badge and one affair. And as much as it hurt, the clarity brought something else with it. A cold, steady sense of direction. If they all thought they could manage me like some unpredictable bomb, they'd forgotten the most important thing about the job I used to do. Explosions are loud. The most effective work is done quietly, in the dark, where nobody sees it coming until it's too late. Standing in Natalie's doorway, listening to her admit she'd known there was a possibility, something inside me settled into place in a way I hadn't felt since I left the teams. It wasn't peace, exactly. It was direction, cold and clear. They all thought I was the wild card, the one who might snap and wreck everything. They didn't understand that I'd spent years learning how to move in straight lines while everyone else tangled themselves up in lies. I'm done arguing in living rooms, I told Natalie. The next conversations about this are going to happen in offices with recorders on the table. Oliver pushed hard once the paternity result came in. He didn't flinch when I told him the baby wasn't mine. He just adjusted the strategy like he was swapping out one kind of ammunition for another. Legally, this actually clarifies a few things, he said over his conference table, papers spread out between us. Your attachment to the child is emotional, not biological. Juries respond to that when it's clear you stayed to protect a baby that isn't even yours. I haven't decided what I'm doing long-term, I said, but I know what I'm doing about Grant. We filed a formal complaint with Internal Affairs backed by Logan's video, Violet's medical records, and Morgan's notes about the trauma to the pregnancy. Oliver attached the preservation letter, insistently worded, demanding dash cam, body cam, dispatch logs, and any prior complaints against Officer Grant for excessive force or misconduct. They'll circle the wagons, Oliver warned. Expect missing footage, convenient glitches, colleagues who don't recall clearly. But if we push hard enough, something always shakes loose. IA called me in first. 2 investigators, one older guy named Victor with a judge's calm face, and a younger woman, Amelia, who took notes like she was carving into stone. We need you to walk us through everything from the first contact between your wife and Officer Grant, Victor said, recorder blinking red on the table. So I did. I walked them through the late-night texts, the emotional grooming, the first questionable traffic stops, the night of the beating. I didn't soften the affair, either. If this was going to be honest, it had to be all the way. My wife made choices I'm not defending, I said. But he made choices wearing your badge. That's the line I'm drawing. Amelia slid a printed still from Logan's video across the table, the frame frozen on Grant's smile as he looked at the camera. Has he ever threatened you directly? She asked. Not yet, I said. Indirectly, he's been in my marriage for months. They were hard to read. Years of listening to people lie will sand your expressions down until they barely move. Still, when I mentioned the text where he warned Violet about talking, I saw Amelia's jaw tighten just a fraction. After Internal Affairs came the notice from the DA's office that they were reviewing the incident for potential criminal charges. Oliver told me not to get too excited. They use language like that to buy time, he said. But the fact that they're not ignoring it means the video hit a nerve. When the department finally put Grant on administrative leave pending investigation, the local news picked it up. They ran a blurred version of the video, Violet's face smudged into anonymity, Grant's features just soft enough to be legally safe, but recognizable to anyone who knew him. A decorated officer with 10 years on the force is now under scrutiny after a viral video shows him taking down a pregnant woman during a traffic stop, the anchor said. They used words like controversial and alleged, but the images did most of the talking. Violet watched the segment from the couch, hand over her mouth, eyes locked on the screen. They're going to know it's me, she whispered. Some people will guess, I said. Some already know. That doesn't change what he did. Natalie called 10 minutes after the segment ended. Her voice was sharp, brittle. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? She demanded. Everyone at church will see that and know it's Violet. The gossip, the judgment. I didn't put a knee in her back, I said. I just stopped helping him hide it. There was a long silence, then a cold, measured response. If you destroy her life because of your pride, I will never forgive you, she said, and hung up. She didn't mention the baby not being mine. That omission said more than if she'd screamed it. Pretrial hearings started a few weeks later. Oliver and I sat at one table. Grant sat at the other in a suit instead of a uniform, flanked by his union lawyer and a couple of fellow officers sitting behind him like a silent wall. He looked smaller without the badge and belt, but the arrogance in his posture hadn't shrunk at all. When he glanced back and saw me, he didn't look guilty. He looked irritated, like I'd interrupted something important. Violet chose not to attend the first hearing. She said the stress wasn't good for the baby, and I didn't argue. Part of me was grateful not to have to watch Grant's eyes flick between us in the same room. Oliver laid out the basics for the judge: excessive force, abuse of authority, pattern of inappropriate contact with a civilian he was protecting. Grant's lawyer countered with talk about split-second decisions, non-compliant subjects, and unfortunate angles that distort standard procedure. Standard procedure doesn't usually include smiling at a camera after you throw a pregnant woman into the road. But they were banking on nuance, confusion, and the public's short memory. The judge allowed the case to move forward. A trial date was set. Oliver said that alone was a small victory. Plenty of complaints die in the shadows before they ever get that far. Around the same time, something unexpected happened. Logan messaged me on the encrypted app, not with another video, but with a screenshot of a comment thread from a closed law enforcement forum he monitored. "Think you should see this," he wrote. The thread was about Grant. Most of the comments were what you'd expect. Officers grumbling about witch hunts and armchair critics who didn't understand how dangerous the job was. But buried halfway down was a reply from a user with a generic handle and no identifying info. "Wish I could say this surprises me. Some of us tried to flag his behavior years ago. IA sat on it. Watch for old cases to resurface if this one sticks." I showed it to Oliver. "Could be hot air," he said. "Could also be your second front. If someone inside the department is getting ready to talk, it changes the whole landscape." A few days later, I got an email from a burner account. No greeting, no name, just a single line. "You're not the first family he's done this to. If you want proof, check the civil filing under Clara Hastings versus City 3 years ago. Sealed, but not erased." Attached was a redacted PDF, just enough visible to confirm an old excessive force complaint involving a young woman, a late-night stop, and improper physical contact by Officer Grant resulting in lasting psychological harm. When I looked up the case number in the public docket, it showed as dismissed with prejudice, settled out of court. Money had changed hands. The story had been buried. "Someone inside has a conscience," Oliver said when I forwarded it. "Or a grudge. Either way, this is leverage." Juries don't like patterns swept under rugs. As the trial date crept closer, the pressure around us thickened. I'd catch glimpses of patrol cars cruising slowly past our street more often than made sense. Once, I was sure I saw Grant himself driving one, even though he was supposedly on leave. Violet grew quieter. She spent hours in the nursery we were still putting together, sitting in the half-built rocking chair, staring at the crib we hadn't finished. One night, she said, without turning around, "If he walks, what are you going to do?" I leaned in the doorway, arms folded. "I'm not planning for him to walk," I said. "That's not an answer," she replied. I thought about it. About every mission we'd planned with contingencies for the worst outcome. About never stepping into a room without knowing where the exits were. "If the system fails," I said slowly, "I'm not going to hunt him down in an alley, if that's what you're asking." Her shoulders sagged a little in relief. "But I won't stop talking," I added. "I won't stop making sure every person he tries to stand in front of knows exactly what kind of man is asking for their trust." "That sounds like a life sentence. For you," she said. "Better than the one he tried to hand you on the side of that road," I answered. When the trial finally opened, the courtroom felt smaller than I expected. Media sat along the back row, pens ready. A few officers clustered behind Grant. Natalie sat next to Violet on our side, spine rigid, eyes forward, as if she could will the whole thing to go away by refusing to look at me. Logan took the stand first, hands shaking slightly as he swore to tell the truth. He explained why he filmed, how he feared retaliation, why he sent the clip to me instead of chasing clout online. Then it was my turn. Oliver guided me through the facts, but there were things only I could say. What it feels like to watch a man who's already slept with your wife treat her body like evidence that needs to be controlled. What it does to you to hear your unborn child's mother beg while a man in uniform grinds his knee into her spine. Grant's lawyer tried to paint me as unstable, a jealous ex-soldier with an anger problem and an agenda. He brought up my deployments, my nightmares, hinted that maybe I saw enemies where there were none. "I've seen enemies," I said, looking straight at the jury. "Most of them didn't get to wear a badge when they hurt people." The judge told the jury to disregard that last line. You can't unhear certain things, though. By the end of the day, I was exhausted in a way no ruck march had ever made me. As we filed out, my phone buzzed with a new message from that same burner account. "You're not done," it read. "He didn't just hurt women on the street. Check internal complaint file HN 47, the one IA buried." I'm ready to talk. For the first time since this started, it hit me that my quiet war with Grant might end up exposing more than one corrupt man. It might crack open an entire system that had been smiling into cameras while people like Violet paid the price. And whoever was reaching out from inside his own world, they were about to become the blunt instrument I didn't have to be. The burner email about internal file HN 47 felt like someone had slid me a key to a locked room inside the building I'd been circling for months. I forwarded it to Oliver, and within a day we were sitting in his office with a new witness on the calendar, an anonymous department insider who wanted to talk off the record before they ever set foot in court. Her name was Harper, a records tech who'd been with the department long enough to know where the bodies were buried, at least on paper. We met in a small rented conference room near the courthouse, blinds drawn, a white noise machine humming in the corner like we were in some kind of makeshift safe house. "I'm not here because I like you," she said, looking at me first. "I'm here because I'm tired of watching the same kind of man walk away clean while women pay the price." She told us about file HN 47, an internal complaint from an officer named Clara Hastings who'd reported Grant 3 years earlier for unwanted physical contact after a late-night response call. Harper had watched IA interview Clara, write up a damning summary, and then quietly reclassify it as unsubstantiated after the union rep and a deputy chief had a closed-door meeting. After that, she said, Clara got stuck with graveyard shifts and junk assignments until she put in for a transfer. Grant got a commendation for community outreach. She slid a folder across the table, copies of the original notes before they'd been sanitized, plus a list of other incidents that never made it past a captain's desk. "This is enough to put them on the defensive," Oliver said later, sifting through the pages. "Patterns like this are exactly what juries latch onto when they're deciding if something was a one-off mistake or who a person really is." When Harper took the stand in court a week later, she didn't look like a hero. She looked like someone who'd gotten tired of living with what she knew. Under oath, she confirmed the buried complaint, the pressure from above, the way Grant's record had been polished to a shine while his targets disappeared into settlements and transfers. Grant's lawyer tried to paint her as disgruntled, someone with an axe to grind. She didn't bite. "My axe is with the system," she said, voice steady. "He just happens to be the one standing on the pile right now." Clara herself appeared next, no longer in uniform, hands twisting in her lap as she described a call where a helpful senior officer stayed behind after everyone else cleared, then blocked her path to her car. "It wasn't as public as what he did to Violet," she said, glancing our way. But the smile was the same. Piece by piece, the picture stopped being about one controversial traffic stop and started being about a man who'd been shielded every time he crossed the line. By the time closing arguments rolled around, even some of the officers in the gallery were looking at Grant like they weren't sure they'd ever really seen him before. The jury took a day and a half. Violet and I waited at separate ends of the hallway, Natalie sitting stiffly beside her daughter, Logan pacing near the water fountain with his hands in his pockets. When the bailiff finally called us back in, my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. "On the charge of aggravated assault under color of law, how do you find the defendant?" the clerk asked. "Guilty." "On the charge of official oppression, how do you find the defendant?" "Guilty." Grant didn't flinch. He stared straight ahead like he still believed this was some bad dream that a phone call from the right person would fix. The judge set a sentencing date and ordered him remanded. No going home to pack a bag. No slow walk out the front door of the courthouse as a free man pending appeal. When they cuffed him at the defense table, I didn't cheer. I just watched, memorizing the sound of the chains and the way he finally looked small inside his suit. Afterward, outside on the courthouse steps, reporters shouted questions about Violet, about the verdict, about what I thought justice looked like now. I kept it simple. Nothing gives my wife back the night he took from her, I said. But today, at least, he has to live with his name on the record he thought would protect him forever. They wanted more, but I was done talking to cameras. In the weeks that followed, things didn't magically get easier. The department did its best to spin the narrative. Isolated bad actor, lessons learned, commitment to transparency. The usual language people use when they've been forced, not inspired, to change. Still, an internal review opened up, and I heard through Harper that HN 47 wasn't the only old file they were dusting off. At home, the quiet between me and Violet settled into something heavy but honest. We had hard conversations at the kitchen table, in Morgan's office, in the nursery with our hands on the same crib rail. "I know I don't get to ask for much," she said one night, eyes red but clear, "but I need to know what you're going to be to this baby when she gets here. I can't do another wave of unknowns. I can't be your husband anymore," I said. The words hurt, but they felt true. Too much of what we had was built on things I didn't know. But I can show up for a child who didn't choose any of this. If you're willing, I'll be there, as the man who protected her before she took her first breath, even if my blood isn't in her veins. She cried, quietly, and nodded. We worked out legal details with Oliver, custody, decision-making, what it meant for me to have rights to a child I wasn't biologically tied to. It wasn't simple, but it was possible. When our daughter was born, screaming and perfect, Violet held her out to me with shaky arms. "Do you still want to?" she asked. I took that tiny, squirming weight against my chest and felt something crack open that hadn't moved since before any of this started. "Yeah," I said. "I still want to." We named her Ruby. Years from now, if she ever asks about where she came from, I'll tell her the truth in pieces she can carry without turning her origin into a weapon. That's part of my quiet revenge, too. Making sure the worst thing a man ever did doesn't get to define the best parts of her life. As for Grant, last I heard, he spends 23 hours a day in a cell with a number on the door instead of his name on a badge. He filed an appeal. It failed. There's no glory in that. No cinematic payoff. Just a man sitting where he belongs, with a record he can't smile his way out of. I never laid a hand on him. I never needed to. The truth, and the people brave enough to speak it, did more damage than my fists ever could have. Sometimes, when Ruby is asleep in the back seat and I'm driving home at dusk, I pass the intersection where it all started. The asphalt looks the same. The streetlights still smear into streaks if you drive too fast. But somewhere deep in the files of that city, and in the memories of the people who watched the trial, the story is different now. And that's the part one hold on to. Not the betrayal, not the bloodlines, but the fact that a man who thought he was untouchable learned that sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous after all. If you were in my shoes, standing between a child you love and the man who hurt her mother, what would forgiveness and justice look like to you? Before you click away, take a second and drop a comment telling where you're watching from and what kind of betrayal, family drama, or quiet revenge stories you connect with most. You sharing that helps shape the next stories that get told here. If this journey hits something real inside you, gently tap that like button and consider subscribing so you don't miss the next thriller-style, emotional revenge story that drops on this channel. And in the comments, let me know what kind of stories you want to hear more of: cheating spouses, family manipulation, courtroom justice, long game karma. So the next time we meet, it's in a story that feels made for you. We'll see each other again in the next epic revenge and betrayal story. Until then, take care of yourself and the people you love, because sometimes the quiet choices you make after the worst moments are the ones that save you.